Minister, this follows on from Deputy Colreevy's earlier question regarding the EPA process and fracking. I have to say I'm not filled with confidence given your initial implacable defence of the process in your read-out answer, and then in the latter reply you say, but you are going to give us an interim report, which is obviously in complete contradiction of what the EPA Head of Research said in March of this year, that there wouldn't be any interim report. So I don't know how you can defend the EPA given that they have been broadly exposed in the eyes of a lot of people on this matter, and I really think the solution is that the process should be called off.
Thank you. Minister.
Thanks, Les Cambercourt. And it's just important about, like, the EPA are independent of government, and I do understand that the contract for the unconventional gas exploration and extraction research programme. Sorry, just move on here. But in light of reading out the formal response and taking up your point, Deputy Daly, the reality is, in 2011, a decision was taken to find out, in the best evidence available, to inform ourselves as policy agents and also as legislators what is the best thing to do here in relation to this research. And I've taken a decision that I'm going to approach the steering committee to look at producing an interim report. And you're correct, that was not part of the original thought process, but I think it's important. And the important point as well is that the original time frame was July 2016 to actually have Phase 1, Phase 2 completed and to dovetail in to a report in 2016. Obviously that's not going to happen. There has been no there's been no tendering process initiated for Phase 2, and in light of no tendering process being initiated, what I'm doing, I'm asking the steering committee to look, in light of the vast body of evidence that they produce and the significant body of evidence they produce, to produce an interim report, and then that will give us time to take stock of the information gathered. That is the succinct, and your question is very much asking, in light of 50% of the research that's been done. My answer is that we need to evaluate, we need to take stock, and we need to get an interim report and consider what has been gathered and what has been garnered in the time that has been afforded them to do this in the first instance.
Deputy Clare Daly.
I think the problem is that stock has been taken of this process so far by people with a greater technical expertise than anybody in this House, and we can say with absolute confidence and without fear of contradiction, this is a tainted process. We know, for example, that Queen's University pulled out at the start. We know that the Dáil was misled about their involvement in the process, having been told of their continued involvement in June 2015, when that was not the case. We know the role of CDM Smith Ireland, which was already highlighted in the earlier question. And obviously we know that all of the peer-reviewed studies and information on this horrendous practice should be leading us in their direction of saying stop the runaway train. But from your answer, what you seem to be saying is that the EPA are independent. Now, they've said they're not doing an interim report, they're ploughing on regardless. And you've said there that you're going to ask them, have you the power to direct them? Are you going to direct them to do it? And presumably, why wouldn't you just direct them to stop in light of the evidence that is out there? Because this does have the hallmarks of becoming a runaway train. We know that the evidence produced since the terms of reference were written is that 69% of research on water quality found potential or actual contamination. These are really serious issues, and all of the peer-reviewed research should be saying we should be abandoning it, not just getting an
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Yeah, just in the first point on Queen's University. Queen's University, they're still involved in a reviewing capacity. They weren't able to commit to the original proposition in terms of funding, so therefore they couldn't do that, but follow through on that. But they are still involved in terms of reviewing. I think it's also important to point out this here is information garnered on a cross-border basis. We have the British Geological Survey. We also have university universities in Northern Ireland. We also have UCD. We have the EPA. We have a collection of expertise which set up the steering committee. So it's actually the steering group that I'm going to be making formal contact with to ask them to produce a review, and that will happen. I've asked my officials, I've spoken to my officials for that to happen sooner rather than later. And within the information that's garnered, I think there is a body of evidence there that will point in the direction to my initial fears when I got this post. The very first day I was answering a question to Deputy Colreevy. I put my own reservations on the floor of this House. We're a small country. We have plenty offshore with about 42 licences, expressions of interest in terms of the Atlantic margins. Offshore, we're a small island. Do I have my reservations about fracking? Yes, I do.
Thank you, Mr.
And I want us to be as clear and as coherent in terms of getting the review and to take stock of the significant body of work that has been completed today, even though that wasn't part of the original hypothesis.
Deputy Clare Daly.
If the Minister and the Government have concerns, I don't know why we're going ahead with this, because it's like a sort of I've started so I'll finish kind of thing, which makes no sense. Let's be clear about Queen's University's involvement. At the Joint Oireachtas Committee last week, the EPA admitted that it had misled the House in that regard of the major change in the status of Queen's involvement in this regard. They actually promoted Queen's with an idea of buffing up or beefing up the supposed independence of the research study. That's a fact. It's on the record. It's indisputed at this stage. And I think throwing more money after it now at this stage is very irresponsible, particularly when 88% of the studies done since the terms of reference were put in place found that air quality had an elevated pollutant emissions. 84% of the original studies on health risks found signs of harm or indications of potential harm to human health, and yet we know that human health is not an area that is being considered as part of this research. So the number one biggest problem about this isn't even being factored in. It's an absolute disgrace that it's continuing further, and if you are steering the ship, you should just throw the anchor over and not even allow it sail forward any further.
Minister, to conclude.
Yeah, let's be very clear. This significant piece of work is going to be completed by the end of January, and it is going to cover areas, and you mentioned groundwater, surface water, associated ecosystems, seismicity, air quality, impacts and mitigation measures for projects, operations, regulatory framework for environmental protection. So there is a significant piece of work. So let's find out what has been evaluated, what has been researched, and inform us as legislators. And to repeat again, I have my own personal fears as somebody who lives in the northwest of Ireland and has plenty of contacts in South Donegal and Leitrim. I have my concerns in relation to we're a small island with plenty offshore in terms of geographical magnitude. I've said it before, we're the fourth largest country in Europe if we bring all our sea areas into it. So there is concerns, there's legitimate concerns, and I want to acknowledge the concerns of people in this House, the people within communities, and also to let people know that I have asked the steering committee to produce a mid-term review, and let's take stock of the findings that we have in the first instance.
Deputy Bernard Durkin has the next question.